Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:01 p.m. and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Mr. Kurth.
Here.
Ms. Scholes.
Here.
Mr. Seidel.
Here.
Ms. Unger.
Here.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Chrislyn did just text me and say she's on her way. She'll be here in a couple minutes.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Chrislyn just texted. She'll be here in a couple minutes.
Oh, okay, good. All right, we're going to start off then with our work session. And these are some items that we talked about previously in a meeting in regards to committees and how we're going to move forward with committees for the year and also appointments. So let me just bring up, just want to keep notes here on this, so if we do any action later, I have it. Okay, I'm going to start with the committee assignments. Last week, I asked board members to email me to let me know what committees that you were interested in. So I made my decisions based on those interests that was expressed to me, and I worked on it over the weekend. And these are the assignments for Personnel Committee. Kate, would you like to continue on as our chair for Personnel?
Sure.
Thank you very much. For Finance Committee, Ron, would you like to be our Finance Committee chairperson?
Yes.
Thank you. And then Mitch, would you like to continue on as our personnel? I'm sorry, not personnel. No. Facilities Committee chairperson.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to change that in my notes. I had two personnel committees. We don't need two of those. Okay, so then with the rest of the appointments to these committees, myself for Personnel Committee, I'm going to continue on there. Mitch, would you like to join our Personnel Committee?
Sure.
Thank you. And then Amy, would you like to join the Finance Committee? Thank you. And then I have Chrislyn. I hope that she'll accept when she gets here on the Finance Committee. And then for the Facilities Committee, Jeff, would you participate on the Facilities Committee, please? Thank you. And then Kate, if you would like to be on the Facilities Committee as well.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So those are the committees that we have standing for now. And we're going to move on to items that to work on to decide for the committees. And I sent each board member an email just saying to be prepared to answer these questions. How often should each committee meet? When should committees meet? What unfinished business does each committee have? What do we want to accomplish with the committees? And how do we best keep the whole board informed of what is going on in committees? And then also proposing, would we want to consider using a committee of the whole for our committees? And this is something that I've seen other school boards use, where while we have official committee members and committee chair, the chair still would be the chair. It's just that everybody on the board would be members of the committee as well, and we would all meet together actually. And so that's something that I've seen done in Muskego and West Allis. So I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. I thought I'd start with the Personnel Committee, and let's start talking there. Who would like to start?
Sure. I can give like what we were currently doing, and then maybe we can go from there. So
Okay.
the Personnel Committee had been meeting every other month, and then we were doing quarterly updates back to the board, and I feel like that was working fairly well. The timing it was off a little bit, I feel like, with some of our spring renewals and things. So the every other month wasn't exactly timed perfectly. So we could probably improve that a little bit and make it just a little bit more timely. But I think roughly like 5 to 6 times a year. The unfinished business that we currently have is we were working on a better method of superintendent evaluation. We were currently exploring what WASB had, and we were looking to get a demo with them. And with Nicole going out on maternity leave early, that hadn't happened yet.
Okay. Okay.
So I think in general, we were doing reviews of some of the Paladina and health insurance and benefits coverage. We had discussions about some professional development opportunities for staff, so just general things as pertain to staff. In 2 years ago, we did reviews of some of the renewal information prior to it coming to the full board. And then obviously we were looking at some policies.
Is that something you guys do every year with insurance? I mean, I guess it depends on if we change our insurance policy, but we generally sign 1-year deals with that. Is that correct? So,
Yeah, so for example, with Kate kind of leading, we've made some pretty substantial changes actually over the course of the last year. We're actually literally in the midst of open enrollment, so we changed our open enrollment date from the calendar year to school year or budget year. So literally, as of last Friday, we ended open enrollment that will begin July 1 for current staff. We don't anticipate anything significantly to change as far as any of our healthcare issues. We are looking at, and I think we have a personnel committee meeting coming up here soon. We were going to ask Kate to add to the agenda opening up opportunities to seek changes for our health insurance and medical insurance consulting. We had been using a firm for quite some time, but I think it's always nice to kind of refresh every once in a while. And so Nicole and Patrick have been essentially vetting various consultants, and we will be bringing forth that plan of action to Kate and the Personnel Committee, and then bring forth a recommendation to the school board probably this fall so that we can start with a new vendor or a new consultant January 1 of next year.
Okay, that was one of my questions, whether or not we had enough for the agenda on our next meeting. So it sounds like we really do need one then.
At minimum, that would be something that I think we should probably at least bring the committee up to speed on. Again, we won't be seeking action for quite some time, but we want to at least get the committee up to speed.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, Kate, you're suggesting 4 to 6 times per year. We know we're going to meet, is it next week already?
It's next Monday, which,
Did you
we
wanna
can look
change
at changing. I didn't say anything because I was like, am I still the chair? I don't know. I didn't set an agenda. I have a couple things that I was going to put on the agenda. So we can keep that date. Especially Mitch, if you're free, it's 4:00 on Monday, the 17th, but we can move it out a couple weeks too, if that makes more sense.
That's right. Are you able to join us?
I was looking at that actually. 4:00 works for me. I can't do
Okay.
later.
Okay, and we've been doing virtual too, just because
Yeah.
we're all kind of ending our days at 4:00 for work, and then it's easy to just call in.
Yeah. No, I could do 4:00.
Okay.
Trying to be as independent of this as possible, I would encourage the Personnel Committee to continue to vet that superintendent evaluation process so that we can move forward accordingly in a timely manner.
Yes.
Agreed.
So when would you think the next, and Joe, you might have input on this, like what's coming up next that the Personnel Committee would need to review to give a recommendation for the full board?
So it would be those two things would be the biggest items that I would see is switching consultants from our current vendor. I mean, the current vendor has an opportunity to stay on,
Right.
but we would be vetting those and bringing a recommendation to the committee for their review, or maybe bringing in at least a couple options to the committee to then bring back to the full board. Obviously, also the evaluation process for the superintendent, as mentioned, is something that should be brought back to the full board. And then, again, not knowing whether we would have committees and or whether Kate was going to stay on, I'd be curious to hear what Kate would have as being that committee chair. And or Janet, if you had any, or Mitch as committee members as well.
I was going to request that, and I think going into what you were talking about with the committee of the whole, I would like to see the committee of the whole kind of evaluate the 2 or 3 things that each committee should do every year. So I think it's going to be health evaluations, teacher contracts, or one of those 2 other items, and bring those in front of that committee as a whole, and we vet that out and then kind of set the agenda for each of the committees. Because I think there's going to be one or two things that happen every year, and then I think there's going to be two or three things that pop up that we didn't see this coming, and we need to.
Right. The only other piece, and again, I'm curious to see where the board will land related to policy review. We have ideas of how to be efficient with that, but certainly there are personnel policies that do need to be reviewed yet. And again, I'm not sure if that's the cadence the board wants to follow, is having the committees continue to review them initially and then bring them forward. So again, I'm curious to see where the board lands with that, because that could be something else that committee could bring forth to the full board.
Could we just kind of piggybacking off what you said, Mitch, could we have each committee meet, and I don't know if before the 24th meeting would be too soon, but if each committee could meet and kind of like discuss what they think should be accomplished, because I feel like without context, like it might be better for the committee to say, here's kind of our agenda and plan for the year, and then we would get sign off essentially from the full board, versus the board trying to think through all the things the committee might need to do. Like it may work better to do it kind of at the committee, but then before we proceed with additional meetings, we get approval from the full board.
I think it's a back and forth communication, which is exactly what I was looking for. Like, how can we better keep the whole board informed of what's going on? So having that back and forth, I think, sounds
And I
good.
think that should definitely be discussed in that
Yeah.
committee, and then
Yeah.
what I'd like to have is a schedule that in February, you guys always discuss the health, and I'm making up dates, but
Yeah.
February, you always discuss healthcare, and then March, you guys do contracts.
And I think we, based on,
I think we're there. I
Kate,
don't think it's going to take a
being
whole.
quarterly, I think we actually strategically did set them up based on specific things. So we can work on that as a committee to set that as mentioned.
Okay.
So I think what I'm hearing is everybody's going to have their first committee meeting and decide like what it is that needs to be done in committee. And then I'll have it as an agenda item on maybe not the next school board meeting, but once all the committees have at least had one chance to meet, have it on the agenda as the committee reports. And so each committee chair can then bring forth, this is what we discussed, these are our goals, and let's hear from everybody. What do you want to, everybody what they want to see from there. Sounds good.
Yeah, I think that would work well. And I think if things come out throughout the year, we can then like assign them to the committee as we had discussed before. So, if we need to change and now suddenly in August, we have to talk about whatever, we
Right.
could then agree as a board that we're going to amend the plan and schedule for that committee for
We
the
did it
year.
last year with the facilities. We had
Yeah.
that extra money, and we decided to spend that and hold the meetings in, so.
Okay. Everybody feel comfortable with that, with the personnel committee? Sounds good? Okay. So I'll just review. Personnel committee is going to be meeting about 4 to 6 times per year, probably most likely virtual since it's just very convenient for us. And then we're going to keep our meeting for next week because we actually do have items that we need to continue on. And then one of the things that we're going to be working on is the new benefit consultant for this fall. And we'll put together our goals and present them then at one of the board meetings to share with the rest of the board. So I'm going to move on to Finance Committee, and I know, Kristlyn, you came in a bit late, so I just want to let you know that Ron is the chair, and I have Amy as a member, and would you like to be a member as well? Okay, thank you. So then for the Finance Committee members, what are your thoughts on how often do you think you're going to need to meet, and your goals and things that maybe haven't been completed yet that were still being worked on?
I'd like to actually hear from Kristlyn and Amy on things that have been, how often have you met? How many, what are you working on, or, what's coming forward with?
Sure, Ron. So I was the committee chair for the last 2 years. And in the finance committee, what we had been working on primarily was revision of policies. So we went through all of the finance policies. There are still, I believe we just have one policy that was tabled at the last meeting, and that would be policy 3170, regarding the naming of schools, facilities, and properties that we tabled at the last meeting. That's the only remaining policy of, I want to say, almost 20 policies we've already reviewed in the last 2 years and revised or sent to other committees for review and appraisal. So we just have that one kind of hanging out there. I do think that there are some other policies that we should visit moving forward. So there are a few policies that we need to visit. And I think that the finance, in my experience, having been the chair for the last 2 years, the finance committee should meet once a month because we have financial reports that come out once a month. And we have had some committee meetings where we have to address information from 2 separate months, which I find a little more cumbersome and takes a little bit more time, which is why if you don't get that review in every month, then you're kind of behind the 8 ball with the following month and you have more to do. So I think that as long as, my recommendation would be to meet once a month. Typically, we don't meet in December because we only have one board meeting in December. And that board meeting is earlier in the month. And because the financial records are not available until that fourth Monday, it doesn't make sense to have a December meeting, for example. And that's similar with July, where we traditionally have only been meeting once a month in July. And then we have to address it, which is why I'm saying, when you have to go through 2 months worth of stuff, it takes a little bit longer and it's a little more cumbersome. So I wouldn't really recommend that. So I guess that moving forward, I would recommend that we meet once a month, that it be that 4th Monday, because that's when the reports from the previous month become available. And then the committee would have enough time to go through those, address appropriate questions to Patrick. And I think that it would probably make sense to sort of solidify, for Patrick's sake, what the schedule on which those questions would be, because I know it's difficult for him to get my questions in the 11th hour because I have a demanding full-time job. And so I think that establishing that kind of a policy would be good for people like me who are busy and everybody else, so that we can make sure that we address these things in a timely fashion for Patrick. So that's, I think, what I would recommend. I do have a lot of notes on what the committee decided were our goals and how we addressed that in the last couple of years. I don't think we should probably go through those now, but at some point. And what the vision looks like for the future. I think we need to probably look at that again, because we had addressed that as a committee. We come to consensus on it, but I think it's a good idea to revisit it with you being the new chair. As far as reporting to the board as a whole, I know that when Amy was president, Amy and I had talked about, I think that we wanted to do quarterly sort of reports. So I had been giving, while Amy was president, I was giving those quarterly reports to the board so that the board was involved and knew what the finance committee was doing and knew that they could bring things to us if need be. I think that was a good schedule and was good to keep the board informed about where we were at with our progress. The board does get apprised outside of those quarterly reviews whenever we brought a new policy for review and approval to the board. In the span of those 2 years, almost 20 policies came to the board. All of them were approved unanimously. And so in that way, the board also had more knowledge about what the finance committee was doing in our time outside of those, in addition to those quarterly reports. So I guess that kind of sums it up in terms of my past work as chair of that committee. And so that's what I know, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So you say review the monthly reports, you're talking about the money that's already been expended?
That's correct.
And that's all available to this body as a whole every month? Currently,
Yeah, it's
correct?
actually in the packet tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks just like that.
Okay, all right. I don't have a problem meeting this next month, but going forward, I'm going to be touching base with Patrick as well. I know that when I was the chair of the City of New Berlin Finance Committee, we reviewed policies, recommended them to the committee of the whole. How I perceive this going forward is we look at budget projections, whether it be 3 to 5 year, review the budget, the yearly budget presentation, and then possibly look at once we touch base with every, and then setting up a schedule for reviewing financial policies as well. So I don't have a problem meeting this month, but going forward, I might want to take a look at meeting as needed or every other month, because those reports are available to this body as a whole. So those are my thoughts, but when's the normal meetings?
Generally, our committee met immediately before closed session on the fourth Monday. So depending on how much was on the agenda for us and when the closed session began, usually we allowed an hour before closed session began.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as I hear it, the unfinished business was policy 3170, which we know was put on hold. New business, looking at reviewing the annual budget, continuing to reviewing policies. Was there something else there?
Looking at budget projections, whether it
Budget
be 3 or
projections.
5 year, starting with maybe 3 and then looking at 5. But I do want to touch base with Patrick and see
Right.
where he's at. I don't want to all of a sudden whip this on him last minute, so.
Okay. And the number of committee meetings per year is pretty much to be determined yet at this time? You want to meet as a committee first to set that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else that wants to be shared about the finance committee before we move on?
How are we doing on time?
We're at 6:22, so I think we're,
I don't know how much time you allotted for each
it's,
topic.
yeah, I didn't really do each topic, so I'm just sort of watching it. All right, then we'll move on to facilities committee. And I know this one sort of was starting to meet just as needed. So Mitch, as I'll just reiterate here, is the chair. Jeff and Kate are members. So what are you thinking as far as how often you guys are going to meet and what you're going to work on?
I'm thinking we're probably going to be 2 to 5 times a year. I'll probably have 2 to 3 planned meetings and then 1 to 2 kind of ad hoc as they come up. We don't have anything major open right now. We got through that, what do we call it, the long-range plan last year, and we built that out for the 4 or 5 years. So we're definitely going to want to review that, I think, before each year, and then probably middle of the year to see kind of where we are for our budget, how much money we have left, or are we under, and kind of allocate funds based on that. But I think those are the 2 main meetings for that, and then maybe 1 or 2 other ones, depending on what comes up. I would like to kind of look in some of the facility rental stuff too, with the new position and all that, and just kind of check on that and make sure that we're progressing with that and report back to the board on that as well. I don't think we have any unfinished business. What do we want to accomplish? What do we keep the whole board? Yeah, I think based on the infrequency of the meetings and the direction from the board, I mean, I think the board's always been pretty well informed on everything that we've done. I don't think there's ever been too many big surprises.
All right, does anybody else have anything to share in regards to facilities? Any thoughts on that? All right, so the way I hear it, it's going to be about 2 to 5 times per year, pretty much as needed. You don't really have any unfinished business. You're going to continue to be looking at the long-range plan and looking at facilities rental. All right, so that pretty much finishes up what we're looking at committee. And I do want to say, as far as continuing with quarterly reports, I am thinking more of doing more often reports. It would be the board meeting following a committee meeting. And I just think, because there's always something to report on. And I think, I just want to share my feelings on keeping the whole board informed of what was going on. I think that the reports were maybe too high level, and I'd like a little more detail, and that's what it was. I know that when I joined the facilities committee late last year, I realized I didn't know what facilities committee was doing, and so I think as part of it was just very high level, and a little more detail in our reports would be helpful. And then we'll move on then to policies, which we sort of hit on this. I would like to see the policies that land the Neola plan, the Neola policy, which would be the newer plan, the newer policy, wherever that lands. And Diana did give us a very nice layout of the most recent policies actually the oldest policies that have not been reviewed yet, all the way down to at the end are the ones we recently updated. And so if a policy clearly lands in like personnel, clearly lands in property, or clearly lands in finance, that those committees should be reviewing those policies. So my thought is, what do we do then with the ones that don't land in one of those committees? And so we have options. One of them was, do we have a policy committee? Another one would be having the administration, like they gave us this list, and then just during regular meetings, we tackle 2 of them maybe per meeting. So anybody else have thoughts on how to tackle the policies?
Yeah, I have something real quick. I wanted to see if Joe would be up for this, but it looks like some of these policies are 6 pages, some of these policies are 2 sentences, and some of these policies don't really have much meat in them. Is there the ability to have your team review these and see, do you think we can eliminate 20 of these or 15 of these so we don't go through and review all of them if we don't need them, and work on some consolidation work on that first?
Yes, so our last policy review, which has been quite some time, we eliminated a lot of policies. And so I think the list that we have is manageable, but we will certainly run through that exercise to determine, and then even just consult with Neola to make sure that, because some policies, even though there's not a lot of substance, you have to have them because you have to have them statutorily.
Yeah.
So we can certainly do that, and we'll be able to bring that back to the board. As far as, the cadence of how we will move forward between what the committees are doing and then that of the rest of these policies, I'd be curious to learn more, because I'd like to know what the goal of the board is. So do we have a 12-month timeline to complete all of these policies, 18 months? Because I do think, depending on how many policies we have and the goal of the board, it would drive, for example, Ron with the finance committee to say, we have to get our policies done by such and such a time, or at least we're going to bring, if the finance committee, there are, say, 10 finance policies, then at least that gives Ron some direction, or Kate with personnel gives them the direction of, okay, we need to figure out if we're going to be meeting quarterly, how many policies do we need to review by such and such a time to meet that goal as a board. So I guess I'd like to get your thoughts on that, board and committee chairs, to figure out how you want to approach that. Because again, for us, we are at the will of the board. We just need to know on our end. And then also, for example, if we do have some personnel things that are being brought forth to the board, having to have Nicole here, I'd rather not have it be scattered. I'd rather have it be strategic, so that we have the administrative resources present as needed when we're reviewing those respective policies.
Yeah, I don't think that there was any policies that we made changes to that were like, if we don't fix this, we're in violation of federal law or anything like that. I don't think any of them were huge reaches to make changes to. But what I'd like to see is have your team review the ones that you guys think are really important and could possibly have that. Because otherwise we're throwing all of our resources at fixing 90 policies based on the date they were written. And it may be a 20-year-old policy, but it may be a perfectly sound policy. So I don't know that we just want to dive into all those. I feel like we should do some statistical analysis on which ones you guys really feel like should be in front of us first. But I think every 5 or 6 years, I think every policy should be gone over.
Right.
So I don't know that we're in a rush to review all 90 policies or whatever in the next year. That's my personal opinion.
Fair enough.
I'd like to have the recommendation from your team on which ones, and then a recommendation of, this is the NOAA policy, we recommend this, or we recommend the Neola with small changes to it.
We can bring that recommendation to the board at the next meeting for sure, because then I can talk to Kelly and Patrick and Nicole as needed to figure out, okay, because we've already done that as we went from the old policies with the suggestions from Neola. Now it's a matter of prioritizing those respective ones. And then I think for the most part, the committees have already brought them up to date as far as, what was needed by date and time. So that's good. So we'd be happy to bring that. And then I don't know, Janet, if you want to add that, or I can just add it to my administrative team report as far as an update, or if you want to have some sort of action. I'm not sure that you need any, but at least we can kind of bring forth as part of the admin team report how we would recommend and which policies may need to be prioritized as needed.
Well, since we're in a work session, we can all discuss this. Does anybody else have thoughts on it? Kate, do you have anything?
I mean, if we're gonna get a recommendation, I think it should be a separate agenda item. I mean, I think like you referenced, Joe, you guys did kind of create the recommendations, but many of them have not been reviewed yet. So yeah, I think prioritization wouldn't be a bad idea because maybe date isn't the best way to be doing it. But I think it would be good to have it as a separate item so we could discuss it if necessary based on whatever the recommendation is.
We'd be happy to do that as an agenda item as well. So Diana has that noted.
Okay, so the way I'm hearing it, we're going to continue with the standing committees reviewing their policies that pertain to them. And then any other policies will be as an agenda item? Okay. And any more feedback on that?
So then would the policies committee not exist? Is that what we're talking about?
We're talking about the policies that we already have that need to be updated, but you bring up a good question. Are there policies that we don't have that we want? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I thought my understanding from what you were talking about before, Janet, was that if we took a look at our list of policies and the policy fell within the range of one of the three standing committees, then we send it to that committee, which makes sense to me.
Right.
So where does everything else go?
That's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and
Are we, I threw it out there, do we want another committee or do we want to do what we just talked about and anything that doesn't land in an existing committee, put it as an agenda item on a regular board meeting? And we will have Joe bring in a recommendation to us and then we would have our first read like we normally would. And then we would have the vote on the second read. And we could discuss it during the first read, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that basically I guess I just have a fundamental disagreement with that process because I think that the direction should come from the board and not from the administration. I think the administration should be consulted, but I think that the direction should come from the board. So I just think that that's my position on that. And I think that that's why a policy committee, when Amy proposed it back in October or so, I think was an appropriate move because then it would leave the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of board members, which is what our responsibility is. So that's my position.
Okay, thank you.
I'll add that a lot of times in Finance Committee, we did send it to Patrick to rewrite the language because we were writing like petty cash policy. And a lot of times we're debating of, do we have $100? Do we have $500? And us as a board don't have the innate details of all that stuff. So I feel like some of those are really good for the board to be reviewing and some of them are much better for administration. So
yeah, and I would agree with you, Mitch. I mean, I think that in those circumstances, but there again, it started with the board members. It didn't start with the administration. It was at the behest of the board, which is where the responsibility and the authority lies. So that's who should be taking the first crack at it, I think. And then when we did look at the language and we felt that we needed sort of the administrative boots on the ground to tell us what in fact do they keep in the schools for petty cash. Patrick, can you help us with that? And he said, of course, because administration has always been, in my experience, very helpful when asked to assist. So I think that policy and procedure is a sound one that has really assisted me in my experience as the chair for the last 2 years of the Finance Committee.
We can make this as an action item during our regular session since it is listed as a possible action. We could vote if we want a committee. Do we want to make that an action item? Or do we feel that we already have enough feedback now that?
I feel like I'd like to let Joe go through this model, and if it doesn't work, we can certainly review it and make changes. But I think that that's the best model going forward for us until it doesn't work. Of having Joe bring them to us, that's what we've been doing.
I mean, mechanisms are in place to have the board have a crack at it. That's why you have a first read. Unless you're eliminating the first read, then that could be problematic. Mm-hmm. But if you're not, then you still have an opportunity to make those adjustments as the board sees appropriate.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, in my experience, the way that it worked best was for, at the committee level, to really kind of get all the churn out on the front end with the committee, and then bring it to the full board for the first read, have a discussion, and then vote on it at the next meeting when we actually, have votes taken. I think that that policy implements what I see as the vision for sort of the statutory structure of the board driving the action rather than the administration driving the action, which I think is where we should be.
Well, we're gonna,
Yeah, I feel like I agree with both, but as far as voting on whether there should be a policy committee, I would like to see the recommendations first, because let's say, you guys review it and you say there's only 10 that we're really concerned about. I think if it's 10 in the whole year, we could handle it at the full board level. What if it's 50? Then we might want to have a policy committee to kind of power through. We'd still do the first read as the full board, but we wouldn't have to necessarily read it in as great of detail if it's been reviewed by 3 people in committee already.
I completely agree, and I think to add to that, if we have a policy committee, they review it twice. So 50 policies are reviewed 100 times. Then they send it to the board for a first and a second read. So 50 policies get 200 reviews. And that's a lot of resources. And that's my concern with it. And that's why I like what you're saying is, I think let's get our feet wet with it, see where we are, and then reevaluate it in a month or whatever it is.
well, if there's no big objections to that, let's do that. If it works out, that's great. If not, then we'll vote on having a policy committee. If there's nothing else on that, then we can move forward to the March financial reports. And since those were not reviewed because there was a hold on the committee meetings, so we put it part of our work session. And I know, Chrislyn, you did give a list of your questions, and I'm sorry, I thought that Patrick was going to be here, so I should have made that clear. Can you answer her questions?
Yes, I actually, to expedite the process, I can do one of a couple things. I can defer the financial reports that are provided to you, so the responses to Chrislyn's questions are in board docs. I can go through them individually. I think that might be a waste of time.
Okay.
But back to Chrislyn's original point, is she would like to have these questions and or responses as part of the record. And so we would recommend, if they're not already publicly posted, that they would be,
Please.
that they would be moving forward. So regardless of who had a question, I think our process would be, we'll respond to those questions and we will include them in your respective board packet to be provided to the public as part of the record.
So going forward, the proposal would be any board member could submit their questions prior to the meeting that where we actually do approve, so it is good. We should be asking questions before we approve something. And then all of our questions would be posted along with all of the answers, and that would be made public after we approve the reports.
That's correct. And then, I guess, these are pretty straightforward questions. So it's not, this format isn't, like it is, a crazy format. It's just clarification of the questions that were asked. So again, that's what we would recommend, to expedite the process. Now, mind you, if somebody wanted to pull something out specifically and have a conversation, then certainly we'd be happy to do that. But, I guess, as with Chrislyn posing the questions initially, would you want anything specifically taken out for discussion?
Right, and since the consent agenda is an action item, it's part of the discussion. And if there is anything questionable prior to
True.
approving, we should
Correct.
be asking those questions.
Per usual, right? Yep.
Okay. Any feedback on that?
I'm fine with that. I just want it all included in the record. So, but as far as including it in the record, I think that it needs to appear in a place that the public can easily access it. The only place that the public would take a look, from my understanding, is the minutes. So that's where I was publishing all of the answers to those questions in the Finance Committee meeting minutes.
Yeah, I think that's something we could do for sure.
Yeah, I think that will be helpful because
Sure.
that's where people are going to go for the public record of our activities.
There is a public packet as well for each meeting, so the public does have access to the particular
Right.
documents.
And I guess, Diana, in my experience, in talking to a lot of different people in the public, I think that the public packet is a little bit cumbersome for people. If they say, look, I just want to look at the minutes and see what happened. Like, that's, I think, something we can get people to look at. Whereas thumbing through all of the different items in the packet, there are a lot of attachments and a lot of different links and a lot of different, things for the people to go through. I'd like to have it, if people ask me, well, what happened at the meeting? I can say, this is where you can find the minutes. That's what happened at the meeting. Do you see what I'm saying? I just want to make it easily accessible to people, because I think the more difficult you make it for people to access that information, the less likely they are to access it. So if we make it easy,
Okay.
I think it's
It's
better.
an
We do-
attachment in the finance tab, right? Right.
Well,
So there's the 4 or 5 financial reports, and then there's these questions that are a tab.
Well, we do have directions on the website how to access the minutes. And, I mean, the minutes are a separate attachment.
Yes.
So like right
I
now,
don't
if,
know. I mean, we-
if a member of the public access, they just click on that link in meetings, and it's the public
It's the
link,
public packet.
and they go to
explains
today's
where to find the
meeting,
minutes.
and then they go to like today's workshop, and they click on financial reports.
Yep.
You've made
And your
everything in their
Q&A
public,
is available right now.
so they could click on your questions and the answers that are there right now. So do you think that's cumbersome to just click on the public packet and go right to the agenda item to get the reports and the questions?
I guess I'd have to see how it got posted.
Okay.
But I feel like if it's going to be, because here's what I wanted. I just wanted to say, I have these 10 questions in the meeting, and have them appear in the minutes. These were the 10 questions that were asked. This is what the answers were. That's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And I think that if we just make it part of the record, then it's part of the record and people can access it. I just want it to be simple for people. Because when people have to click around 5 or 6 times to get where they need to go, they're A, less likely to do it, and B, more likely to be frustrated. Like, why did they make this so hard? Why can't I just get to something easily? I think it's important that we make it easy, because people are busy.
It is, I mean, in my opinion, it's pretty simple to find it because it's attached to that line
Yeah.
item in the agenda.
Every proposal we get from a contractor, or anything that we approve, it's in there as a link, right?
Correct,
That's what everything is that goes in there.
right.
I want you guys to consider the fact that we work in this system all the time. The public doesn't.
Do you have any examples of anywhere else? Because I've been looking around at a lot of other school districts, and they have the same setup we have. Have you seen something different?
I'm just saying what I did on the finance committee when I was the chair and I was doing the minutes was I would put everything in the minutes, because then people have a clear record of what we did at every meeting. This is what happened. This is what the questions were asked. These were the answers. And that's how I felt it was easy to communicate with the public and make sure that they knew what we talked about. That's how I wrote those minutes. And I think I found it helpful. And when people ask me questions, I could refer them to those minutes. Instead of saying, well, you have to go to the packet, and then if you scroll on the item in the agenda, then you have to get to this part in the agenda. And then when you get to that part in the agenda, there's going to be these 7 attachments. And it's not the first attachment, it's the 6th attachment, and you got to get to that. Do you see what I'm saying? It gets a little cumbersome.
It's also hard to find the minutes, though.
Yeah, I've never looked at the minutes before. I feel like that's the harder thing.
Yeah.
I guess, so on the
Well,
meetings
that's
when-
something that could be
And the
addressed
minutes are
too.
always, the week of
on
behind,
the meetings when you don't have the questions ready in advance and you email them to Patrick, you haven't included those in the minutes then, right, in the past? Because they're not.
No,
part
I
of the meeting.
do. If you look at my last committee meeting that we had,
We have a minute.
yeah. So, yeah, I did include those much. And whenever I was reading the minutes,
Is
I
this
know
something the finance committee would like to pick up to hash out? How can you better communicate?
that's
the
up to
public?
Ron. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
May I say something about minutes, however? Minutes are a record of what was done, not what was said. So,
Right.
Right, but I do think, Diana, and I think you and I have had conversations about this over the past. My position on minutes is, and has always been, if I can't attend a meeting because I have something else come up, as a board member, I should be able to go to the minutes and find out what happened at that meeting. And I understand your position, but this is it's more of an art than a science, right? And in my position, as a board member, if I can't make it to a meeting, I really would like to be able to read the minutes and find out what actually went on at that meeting. The minutes that we have don't always do that. And I think it is important that people know what was said. And I think it is important that answers that were given are shared and that the record is made. So that's my position. I know that you and I have talked about that in the past, and that I think that the mantra has sort of been less is more, from the district's perspective. I disagree with that. I think that minutes should be detailed, And they should give a very good record to the public about what happened so that they can take out that sheet of paper or those 2 sheets of paper or whatever it is and see what happened at a meeting. I believe that's my personal position.
And, I mean, every meeting is recorded too.
I understand that, but Joe, not everybody has the 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, depending on how long we're here, to sit and listen to all of it, do they? You know what I mean? And again, to the point of making it easy for the public, that increases our transparency and thus our trust with the public. That's important.
That isn't how we are doing minutes. That is not district policy or practice.
Agreed.
It's Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, but here's the thing. I think that we have discretion about what we include because it's our body's authority and duty to review and approve those minutes.
I think we got to keep moving.
Yeah, we do have to move. So that's always something we can talk about. If anybody comes up with some ideas, let's consider them. So, but we do need to move on to closed session now.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
We skipped letter C.
Oh, did I have one more? Oh, I'm so sorry. Privilege of the floor. Okay, so this came up, Kate made me aware that there might have been a misunderstanding as to how many privilege of the floor sections we could have during one of our meetings. And when I went back to read it again, it says a time for public participation. And so I just wanted to know what everybody else had thought when we voted on that. Were you thinking it allowed for multiple, or were you thinking it was just for one, as we currently have?
Yeah, so when we discussed that policy, it was my understanding that the policy changes were going to allow us to put the privilege of the floor anywhere on the agenda, including multiple times in the agenda. So I read the A public comment as a description of each public comment agenda item and not necessarily as a restriction to only one public comment per meeting.
And I would agree with that. I think that Kate had previously suggested having sort of a privilege of the floor or an open forum at the end of our board meetings, where people who've taken the time to come and who have listened to the entirety of the board meeting and would like to say something at the end about something that they heard, because our privilege of the floor where it's placed is at the beginning of the meeting, right? So people who come and take the time to do so, who want to say something at the end, would then have an opportunity to do so. They would be governed by the same rules as the current policy on privilege of the floor, but people would have that opportunity to voice their concerns instead of having to, I really have something I want to say, and now I can't say it because there's no forum for me to say it. Now I got to email my school board members, and what was I really going to say that night? Because now it's the next day, and I don't have my thoughts in my head anymore, and I'm busy, and I got 3 kids at my knees. So that would give the public an opportunity to have more input, and I think would, again, be good for the people who actually take the time out of their day, which is no small feat for a lot of people, to be here.
Okay, I need to hear from other people. We don't want to take too long for this.
So one of the top reasons teachers were leaving our district was because we had too many meetings. We asked Joe to address that. We asked them to make changes, but with this, we're asking our administration to be in longer meetings now too. So they need time with their families and they need time to create better outcomes for our kids. I don't believe that having them sit in 4 to 5 hour meetings is really accomplishing that. I personally believe that privilege of the floor is a good forum for people to address concerns, but having 2 of them I think is starting to stretch that. It doesn't allow for two-way communication, and it's usually 30 minutes before I'm able to take a vote on that item. I don't have the ability to research if it's an opinion or what the data is. I'm not able to do any due diligence on that. So for me, privilege of the floor is not as valuable as a phone call or an email. I can have a conversation with someone for 30 seconds or 20 minutes if it's just to clear something up or to go into detail with them. So we set high expectations for our staff, and requiring them to sit through longer meetings with more one-sided communication, I don't believe sets them up for success. Everything has trade-offs, and in this case, I see more potential downsides than upsides.
Did anybody else think that our policy had opportunities for multiple privileges of the floor? Personally, I liked that it was, it's very flexible. We could put it at the end, but I think that it only allows for one. I agree with Mitch that we really don't want to extend our meetings. That's not necessarily the most productive. And also, it doesn't allow for two-way communication. I think it's important that we have our privilege of the floor, but it's very limited, and it's really hard to be able to convey information back. So that's why I'd like to continue with what we do now, is having one per meeting.
The only comment I make about that real quickly, Jen, is the concerns that you have about the policy are things that we could change. We could make a two-way communication. We could also change the word from A, if you think A precludes us from doing twice, to do it to.
I'm not sure we can do two-way communication. I've done some research on that.
No, but I'm saying that the concerns that you have about the existing policy are within our control, is what I'm saying.
My concern about it being two-way communication, I mean, that's in our control, but it wouldn't be during a regular board meeting, because a regular board meeting is not a public meeting. It's a meeting held in public.
I understand that. What I'm saying to you is that I think that it would help with two-way communication, because then we would have another outlet for people to tell us what they want or what they're concerned about at a meeting where they didn't have that opportunity before. Because then they would tell us, and to Mitch's point, we can go away and do whatever research we need to do and get back to those people. I always take notes for privilege of the floor with names and,
Okay.
all of that.
Well, we don't have a whole lot of time to debate this now. We can debate this as an action item during our regular meeting, and that the motion could be made. You could make your motion that you want to amend the privilege of the floor policy to include multiple opportunities. And then if we all want to vote for that, we'll vote for that.
Sure, that's
Okay,
fair.
let's do that.
Yeah, that
All
sounds
right,
fair.
thank you.
Sure.
All right, so now we can close out our work session, and we will move into closed session. I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
It's like 6 pages deep now with all the work session.
I move to recess into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85-1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of April 26, B, employment performance compensation matters pertaining to staff.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Helmer. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby,
Yes.
Mr. Helmer,
Yes.
Mr. Kurth. Yes. Ms. Schulz,
Yes.
Mr. Seidel,
Yes.
Ms. Unger,
Yes.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Yes.
Motion passes. We are moving into closed session, and we'll return to open session around 7 o'clock. Thank you. Does he see me? Are we ready? Okay. It is now 7:05, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all who are able, please rise. And now for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal-Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. We will begin tonight with recognitions.
Yeah, so we, on a quarterly basis, are bringing forth partners that we have the opportunity to work with on behalf of the students. As the board is aware, one of our strategic goals is mutually beneficial partnerships, with the key being mutually beneficial. It's beneficial not only to the organization and or business that's supporting us, as well as that of our school district and specifically our students. With that, I'd like to introduce our Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, Kelly Kwiatkowski, to introduce our guest.
Hi, it is my pleasure this evening. Wait, is it going to go on? Oh, it will. It's always me. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce our guest, Jim Baer from KHS USA in Waukesha, Wisconsin. So they are our award recipients tonight of our Career Education Partnership Spotlight. We've had the privilege of sending 2 of our students the last few years to KHS for youth apprenticeships. We have one student right there who's in a youth apprenticeship who will be hired there as a machinist next year. So not only are they giving our students experiences to explore pathways, but they're also taking on qualified and quality employees after. So I'm really thrilled to have Jim here tonight, who is a graduate of Eisenhower. I know, with us to give this award. And also wanted to say from our student who couldn't be here tonight, he's a West student, Hayden Fritz. He has a quote: "I came to KHS not knowing whether or not I would be interested in machining. Once I saw what machining was like, I became very interested in what the trade is and what it has to offer me. I would like to personally thank my counselor, Mr. Hunt, and my supervisor, Jim, for all of the great opportunities they have given me over the last year and a half." So thank you.
Yeah, this program is very special to me. I graduated from Eisenhower in 1998. At that time, the shift within the high schools was to move away from the trades and move away from shop classes and move away from that exposure. To see it come full circle 23 years later, 22 years later is really makes me proud of this partnership, proud of this school district, proud to say I graduated from New Berlin. Hayden's taken the same route that I took when I graduated, chose a 4-year apprenticeship. And from there, KHS saw potential and sent me to school for further education later on in my career, and I stand before you as a success story, and I'm hoping that this program will breed a lot more success stories over the years. So on behalf of KHS, thank you all very much for supporting this program, and fostering a strong partnership. So thank you very much.
I think what's important to note here is that we as a school district cannot be everything to everybody. And that is why it's critically important to have partners like KHS, Jim, and so on, to be able to help maximize those opportunities for our students. We can't just purchase some, machines that they have at their shop, here. Now, could we, partly send our kids to WCTC? Yes, we can do that. But not every kid can do that. And that's why we have, again, like partnerships with KHS, where, again, we may not have the machines here on site, but we have the opportunity to partner with great businesses and allow these awesome opportunities for our kids. So, again, on behalf of the School District of New Berlin, thank you very much for the partnership. It's certainly our pleasure, and we really appreciate what you're doing on behalf of our students.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Our next group would be the Cyber Patriots. So before I talk about this group, I will talk about them just shortly because I just can't. It's our third year having this group. So you as a board agreed to this group a couple years ago, and it's our third year, and I am proud to say all 3 years they're in the top of the state. And this year, they're in the top 3 of the state of Wisconsin. So when I asked them to come up and say their names and introduce themselves and their grade to you, please note that how proud I am of these students, and then we'll introduce their advisor, Mrs. Home, in just a moment. So we'll start. Come on up, introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Austin Kugler. I am a junior.
Next.
Hi, my name's Sid. I'm a senior.
My name's Eric. I'm also a senior.
I'm Jared Samoji, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Jazz, and I believe I'm a senior.
So needless to say, we are really proud of this club. All of these students are New Berlin West students. Yes. So when we take their picture, we will not take their picture near the Lions tonight. And now I'm going to introduce you Mrs. Home. We are thrilled to have her on staff. She provides us not only terrific computer science instruction for our students, but also mentorship, guidance, career advisor to many of our computer science and infotech students. So thank you for everything you've done for this club.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity and recognizing these amazing students. It means a lot to us, and we really appreciate it. We started the Cyber Patriot program, which is a program that helps the students get the experience about cybersecurity, which is a very hot, in-demand job to see if the students are interested in this career. We started 3 years ago with no mentorship, with nothing, but they worked day and night. They worked hard, practicing. They worked together, learned from each other, and especially this year, well, the first 2 years they were top in gold and platinum division. This year they aced it despite all the problems, the virtual learning, working from different places, but they overcame all the challenges and they became top 3 in platinum, which is the highest division in Wisconsin. I cannot be more proud of them. And despite all the challenges, they started mentoring other students, so this would continue in future, and I am so proud, and it's my pleasure to work with them, learn with them, and watch them grow. Thank you so much for all you did for us. Good.
Once again, thank you to the school board for supporting these efforts. Again, these CTSOs, these opportunities for our students are critical, and it certainly goes well beyond the classroom, and obviously you are seeing the success. In talking to the students earlier, you've got some kids going to four-year schools, you've got some kids going to WCTC or a technical college, and so they are choosing their various paths regardless of whether it's a four-year school or a two-year school or possibly going right into the workforce. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I forgot to give these to you, so Sid, come on up. Congratulations. Thank you. Anthony, I don't think Anthony's here tonight, though. Correct. Okay. Austin Kugler. Eric Western. Jazz Van Blericum. And Jared. Thank you. Thank you. And cybersecurity is a new class next year that you passed, so we'll have a semester experience for students at Eisenhower and West. So thank you. More to come on that.
Thank you, great. On to privilege of the floor. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. This portion of the meeting is an opportunity for you to come and voice your concerns to the board. So please do not be offended when we quietly listen. We may even take notes. We do not immediately respond to your questions and comments. This is a time for you to talk and us to listen. Thank you for coming to voice your comments and concerns. When I call your name, please step up to the microphone, address the chair, and state your name, and whether or not you are a resident in this school district. Each presentation is to be restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Privilege of the floor will be limited to 1/2 hour. Presentations are not to be designed for purposes of engaging others in a debate in this forum. Discussion of certified, classified, or professional personnel, or of individual Board of Education members should not be considered an appropriate topic for this forum, and the speaker will be ruled out of order. First up, Nicole Balistreri.
You don't mind if I take this off too? So okay, thank you. Well, guys, I hate to bring you the downer after that really cool announcement, but I think you all probably know me. I've emailed most of you. I'm really sorry for the excessive emails in your inbox. You know, I was gonna come here tonight and give you a list of facts and figures, different stuff about masks, coronavirus, and microns, and how big the holes in the masks are, and how big COVID is, and about vaccines, and who's had them, and who hasn't had them, and when they're available and when they're not. But I don't really think that that matters right now because I've emailed it all to you. And I think you're all really smart, and you can get all that information, you know, if you so choose anyway. But what I do want to tell you tonight is about what's happened to me in the last week. So about a week ago, I came together with some other parents, and we formed a informal group of moms, and we made a Facebook page. There's over 3,000 members now in this Facebook group. It's called We the Parents of Wisconsin. And when I tell you that the things that these parents have shared with me, including parents in this district, chill me, they make me sad, I cry. I don't know what to do with the information except come here and speak for them because a lot of them don't have the courage to do this. So I'm going to share with you 3 specific examples that really got me, and I can assure you that there are more. I realize that this is not the official mask meeting. That isn't really something you're planning to cover today, but I wanted to come here before this escaped me, but I don't think it could, to be honest with you. A mom in this district has shared with me that her athletic son is now suffering with unexplained illness and low oxygen levels. She monitors his oxygen on a regular basis as a result of mask wearing on a regular basis. He's been to the doctor, he's been tested for strep and for COVID and for everything else. He's depressed. He's not happy with this. A second mom shared with me that she didn't even want to come here today, but that her child is depressed, is having a really hard time with the constant reminders and the weird innuendos being made that if you don't want to wear a mask, maybe you're a Republican or you're this or you're that. That has no place in the school systems, and I think we all agree that. Another mom in this district has shared with me that her high school student is actually scared to see teachers out in public without her mask on because she doesn't want the teachers to make comments to her when she's back in the classroom. That shocked me because I moved to this district because I believe that these are great schools. We've been here for 2 years. I live on Crabtree Lane, by the way. I didn't say where I live, Crabtree Lane. And I wanted my daughter to go to these schools, and I hope that she can come back for first grade. But that really made me think about something Mr. Garza said in the last meeting, which is this has become a divisive topic, and it really shouldn't be. We really need to think about the kids and put the kids first. And I really thank you all for being here and for continuing to do that. But this is something that we now need to make a parent's choice. This is an optional thing. These are not approved for everyone to wear all the time, right? If you look this up, this is an emergency mitigation measure. But I think we can all agree and understand that everybody that wants a vaccine can get one. We know that COVID doesn't really affect children like we thought it did in March of 2020. It's time for us to continue to lead from the front, and it's time for us to move on. So I am asking you today that when you do vote on this measure, that this is public, and I would like everybody's specific vote to be recorded in a way that we, as parents in the district, can all see. And I also, would like to say that if there is going to be no change in your existing mitigation policy, then I think the board and the district does owe us some stuff, but I think that's probably my 3 minutes, so thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just a reminder, you don't have to give your full address, just state that you live in the district. Up next is Jeanette Nowak.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette Nowak, and I'm a resident and taxpayer of New Berlin. My ask is this of the board: that it is the responsibility of the board members and superintendent to take the statements made by various stakeholders who come to the podium during board meetings seriously. That what these individuals are stating are actual complaints made at a public meeting with record proof. I ask that the follow-up with an investigation be concluded when people come to speak their truth, just like if it were an email or a form submitted. The complaints of racism and discrimination are not ignored anymore. On February 22nd, 2021, a high school student came to the podium to speak his truth. He spoke about inclusivity and diversity in the district. Most specifically, he talked about how the N-word is used by students and other racist rhetoric. He openly made a claim that he had witnessed these behaviors going on. He stated he knows of people who do not feel comfortable at the high school because of their skin color due to discrimination. On March 8th, 2021, a high school student came to the podium to speak his truth. He spoke about how he knows students at his school who do not feel safe because of the color of their skin and face discrimination. Again, another public complaint made to the board and on record. On March 8th, 2021, a former student came to the podium to speak her truth. She requested to listen to the community who are speaking out about racism and was present when she was in school. She spoke out the racial slurs being used and the trauma that the individuals who were targeted are still coping from the events from students, staff, and parents. She shared that it continues to get worse in the schools. She made a claim that a current student right now was thinking about suicide based on racial bullying. This is a serious claim to make and no doubt should be ignored during the meetings. Again, another public complaint made to the board and on record. On March 22nd, 2021, a high school student came to the podium to speak his truth. He talked about racism in the district and how he witnessed them. He hears the N-word and the hard R-word spoken, racial slurs, and how there are stereotypes being used as facts about people of color. Again, another complaint made to the board. On March 22nd, a current parent came to the podium to speak his truth. He spoke about how his daughter had been mistreated by students and staff, how there was no action taken from the teacher when he went to approach her about the issues, about how his daughter had been called coronavirus and nothing was done. He asked who was going to hide behind the silence, who is going to insist that racism is not bad, who is going to suggest what we are doing already is good enough. Well, I will respond from that March 22nd. I am sorry that the students are now traumatized with racism and discrimination in the district. How many more complaints will it take before action to make change? How many more students will feel that possibly committing suicide is the answer? take the statements made by stakeholders about racism and discrimination seriously, and follow up with an investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Diana Marinette. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. Is it Diania? Oh, I'm so sorry. Deania.
Okay. As she stated, my name is Deanna Marriott, and I'm not a resident of New Berlin. So I'm here representing CERN, Community Ending Racism Now, an organization that was created after my daughter was called racial slurs, and she was suspended in Greendale School District. I could tell you from firsthand experience that being called racial slurs repeatedly is very traumatic. She was depressed. It was her junior year. Her grades slipped, and it's something she still deals with today. I went to the district, the principal, and the school board repeatedly to address the racist environment that my daughter was enduring, and they ignored me, similar to what seems to be happening here to BIPOC students. The board eventually listened because I filed with DPI, and ACLU took my case. Once my case was taken by ACLU, more parents spoke out about racial slurs their child or children endured. Now 2 years later, and thousands of dollars that has been spent in Greendale, they now understand the importance of equity. They have hired an equity director, and all teachers receive anti-racism training as a part of their training in the school year. It is important that every child feels welcome and receive quality education. It is the job of the board to ensure this happens. CERN will be watching and working with New Berlin Speaks Out to make sure that this district is looking at everything through an equity lens. I will also be reaching out to the BIPOC students who have spoke here and alumni to make sure their voices are being heard. I hope you all do the right thing and work with New Berlin Speaks Out and the BIPOC students here in the district to deal with the inequity that currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other? This is all? Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, then we're going to move on to the administrative team report.
Yes, so I'd like to invite the Poplar Creek administrative team, Principal Matt Stepneski. And
Oh, I'm sorry, I had a president's message.
You can have one if you want.
Actually,
No,
I
you're the
really
boss.
don't though, but Mitch reminded me that there was a president's message. But I just want to thank though the board though for coming to the work session prior and really staying on track and having good discussions. So I really appreciated you guys all doing that, and the administrative members who stayed with us through that too. Thank you. Go ahead.
And now, take two. The administrative team from Poplar Creek will be giving their respective school update. As the board knows, we've provided updates from each respective school, I think so far already this year. And Poplar Creek now has their opportunity to shine and share what they are doing over at Poplar Creek.
Good evening. My name is Matt Stepneski, and I'm very fortunate to be the... Okay. Here we go.
You're too tall.
All right, here we go. So the Cyber Patriot guy was taller than me, so I figured we were good. So my name is Matt Stepneski. I am very fortunate to be the principal at Poplar Creek Elementary School.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Tarojan. I'm the associate principal at Poplar Creek.
And so we get a chance tonight, like we do every year, to kind of share the progress of our school action plan goals here at Poplar Creek. And also how they align to our district goals. So the district goal of increasing student performance also aligns with our vision of building, shaping, and inspiring all learners to achieve at high levels, and one of our staff beliefs that all kids can learn. So school action plan goal number 1 is actually in the area of reading, and we are trying to get the percentage of students that are on grade level in reading to increase by at least 5%. And the criteria we use is on the board here. Students have to reach 3 out of 5 of this criteria each quarter when we take a look at their grades and their assessments. And so in fall, 74% of the students were on grade level in reading. As of winter, which was the end of January, end of semester 1, we had 79% of our students on grade level in reading. As a staff, we also take a look at subgroups. And so students with disabilities that were on grade level in the fall was 30%. And that number has jumped to 56%. So we're very proud of that data, along with this next one, which is students that are economically disadvantaged. There were 61% of them on grade level in the fall, and now it's 78% as of the end of semester 1. Students that were not on grade level yet, so when we looked at the 56 students that were not on grade level yet as of the fall, we wanted to kind of close that gap, and so we were hoping that half of these students would make at least, would grow in at least one of these 3 areas in order to close that gap. And so as of winter, 27 of those students had done that. They had grown at least 3 percentile points on their MAP test, their winter MAP test. We're going to look again in spring. They either met their growth target on their progress monitoring if they're in a formal intervention for reading, or they met their reading-specific goals within their IEPs. On to math. Oops, sorry, not yet. So this is 6th graders in a book club, so what reading class looks like in action here. 6th graders in a book club, and here is a virtual kindergartner read aloud. On to math, there we go.
Yeah, you can't forget the pictures. Our second objective that we're going to talk about is math. So by the end of the school year, similar to reading, we want the kids on grade level to increase by 5%. And we are looking at MAP tests, classroom tests, and report cards as criteria for that. In the fall, 81% of our students were on grade level, and in the winter, 82%. Breaking it down, our students with disabilities, 39% in the fall, with a great jump up to 60% in the winter. And now looking at economically disadvantaged, 69% in the fall were on grade level, and 80% in the winter. So great jumps there we're very proud of. Again, similar to reading, for our students who are not yet at grade level in math, we are wanting at least half of them to grow in one of the 3 areas here. So of the 38 who are not yet at grade level, it is not showing, but I believe it was 14. Yeah. It's 14. I know it is. Are on grade level, or we're meeting one of those criteria now. Math in action. This is Miss LaHaye. This is an engaging math lesson in 6th grade, and then some hands-on math in kindergarten.
Another school action plan goal is setting and meeting of Coyote Time goals. Every student has a Coyote Time goal that they work through each day, whether it's reading, math, writing. Some students are working on their behavior. And so we want 90% of those student set Coyote Time goals to be met. So we take a look school-wide. 80% of those goals were met in the fall, up to 83%. So this is an area of growth for us. We're trying to get to 90% of those goals met by the end of the year. This is what goal setting with action steps looks like in kindergarten. And so the goal is to become a super reader, and the arrow points to just one way they can do that. I will stop at tricky words and say all of the letter sounds. I will realize that a vowel sound doesn't make sense and then try a new vowel sound to see if it does. So this is what kindergarten goal setting looks like for Coyote Time, but all grade levels do it.
Okay, our next district strategic goal, foster a collaborative work environment that attracts, retains, and honors high-quality staff for the benefit of students. That goes along with our belief that relationships come before results. So we have an objective based around social and emotional learning. So the social emotional learning needs of our students and staff will be taken into consideration, proactively planned for, and responded to as measured by maintaining or increasing results that I will show you. So each year we give our students a survey. You can see we have not given that survey yet. It does come in the spring, but we are tracking results year by year. So as an example, one of the questions that students are asked, When work is challenging, I want to work even harder on it. So you can see in 2019, 70% of our students had either agreed or strongly agreed, and then in 2020, 73%. So we're looking for an even larger jump this year. Similar, our families are given an annual survey. You can see if you really look at the numbers here, from 2019 to 2020, we really had some huge jumps, so we're looking to jump more. But as an example, the second bullet point, the school provides help for students experiencing mental health issues. In 2019, 47% of parents agreed with that, and in 2020, 95%. So some huge work in that area. So our staff survey is a little different. We give this one quarterly. And we've really taken time this year to dig into this because we are working during a pandemic. And so when we're asking staff these questions, it's specific to working during COVID-19. So as an example, I am concerned about students' physical health. That means, of course, we're always concerned about their physical health, but specifically during COVID, are we concerned that they will get sick at school? In October, 70% of staff are concerned, and we've dropped down to 44%. So teachers are happy with what's going on at school and do feel that kids are safe. One way that we are really looking at this year, we have school leadership teams. Got it. School leadership teams, and one of those teams is working, doing a book study with the book Onward, and they are digging into the chapters of these books, with this book with our staff, and basically cultivating resilience with our staff members throughout the school year. That does go along with our belief that learning is the work, and that includes with adults. Also, our vision, striving to become a model of learning and teaching excellence in the district and state. Just to share a few partnerships, we've got a New Berlin West student working with us in her education concepts course with our kindergarten teacher. And then we have 2 students from local universities who are working with our cooperating teachers during their internship. Some awesome news is we have 2 recipients at Poplar Creek of the Cole Fellowship. So we have Miss Seeley, our art teacher, and Miss Fadinia, who is our speech and language pathologist.
And Tara was the School District of New Berlin's first ever Wisconsin Teacher of the Year. So we just found that out, well, some of us knew longer, but she just found that out last week. And so 1 of 5 Wisconsin Teachers of the Year is Tara, which is amazing. She will get, sure, we can clap, it's great. Yeah. So she has the opportunity to possibly represent Wisconsin in the National Teacher of the Year contest or award, so yet to be seen on that. This is my part, sorry. All right, so another district goal, and we heard about it before with the community partnerships that are mutually beneficial. And so we've been fortunate that the kids have kind of taken this goal. They didn't even know it, and they took it on. 3rd grade brownies got Starbucks and coffee and donuts for the snowplow drivers as a thank you for clearing the roads. The 1st grade daisies bought Girl Scout cookies for a number of staff members in the school, thanking them for what they do every day. Here's one of our custodians. 3rd grade teacher connected with the Ike Cares Club to recycle old markers, so those boxes fill up quite quickly in elementary school. And these 3 girls we talked about the first time we were here, first semester, they came to us at recess one day and wanted to start the donation organization station, and they raised clothing and goods for the Hope House first semester, and then they raised dog treats and toys and stickers and all things animals for Hawes in Waukesha. And now their next one will be a fundraiser for Children's Hospital because one of the girls has a connection to someone who is there. This is me, right? I think it's me. Sorry. And I have the notes. Kindergarten author visit, virtual author visit with our kindergarten classroom, dental hygienist and author. And our celebration of literacy was usually in person. This year it was created by our staff team to become a virtual event, but partnerships with 6th grade students for read aloud, video read alouds with New Berlin West Theater. So they did a great job with that. And this literacy piece connects to our, just a small look behind the curtain as far as what we spend our money on. And so the last couple of years we have budgeted up to about $8,000 for classroom library books. So texts that have diverse themes, diverse characters, empathy, kindness, respect. We want students to see, windows and mirrors when they're reading. And so they get to read about other characters like themselves, and then they get a chance to read about everyone else. And so that's what we have been trying to spend classroom budget money on with the help of our teachers as they research diverse texts. And then a lot of it has fallen with our literacy coach as she vets these titles and really helps us out in what could be instructional read-alouds, what could be shared reads, what could be book clubs. So that's just a little peek behind our fiscal responsibility. And we've had very limited visitors to the building this year, so we wanted you to come on inside, check out our new school sign from the class of 2021, and see one of our staff beliefs that we are a team. So here are the 6th graders after some poor recess behavior. They made this banner for the recess supervisors, and one of our 6th grade students has some really good foresight, and he wrote, "I'm sorry for what we have done and for what we will do." So just covering recess till June, 6th grade recess till June.
Okay, we had a local artist come and actually work with every single student in our building to put a mural up in our cafeteria wall. So there's the final product. Here we had a medieval version of Shark Tank in our 6th grade classroom. Here we were using some maker space, and the kids were making a trap to catch the following leprechauns. It was successful. I don't know who these good-looking folks are, but they came and dressed up like clowns and did some really impressive juggling for the kids as an incentive. Here we have our kindergarten students dressing up for the Hundreds Day. And then we have some 6th graders just kind of rolling around, moving their bodies.
The very same 6th graders that said, we want to be a part of this presentation. So the same ones from recess still want to be a part of this. So no, great group of kids. We'll be sad to see them go. But thank you for the opportunity to share our school action plan goals with you. We have time for any questions, maybe a little bit of time.
Yeah, I just want to just say that I'm extremely proud of the work that's being done at Poplar Creek, obviously, as well as all of our other schools. Matt, I'm not sure if you know, but Matt has been in the district for quite some time. I don't want to, age him out, but for quite some time. He was a teacher, was a dean of students, was an associate principal, and is now a principal. So he's moved through every possible rank that we have, and proud to have Matt on our team. Extremely proud to have Jenny, who's in her first year. Welcome during this great pandemic year, right? But we sought out Jenny. It was great to have her join our team, and the leadership there at Poplar Creek is certainly next to none, followed by the work of our staff. Again, Matt mentioned we have a teacher of the year, a state teacher of the year. She is one of 5 teachers as recognized this year, and she will be an ambassador for basically a calendar year, representing not only the school district of New Berlin, but Poplar Creek as she moves, those efforts forward. Certainly she's down to one of 5 to be selected as being part of that national, possibly the National Teacher of the Year recognition, and we're certainly hopeful that she can do that. But Tara is a testament to the work that's being done there, and certainly we've got incredibly supportive families and very creative and forward-thinking students too. And so thank you very much for your work. Again, we do a lot of work. They mentioned some of the things that we're doing as far as diverse texts and our work in diversity and inclusion. And that's what we do. That's just what we do. It's part of the fabric of our work in the school district of New Berlin. And so, with that, I guess I would open up to see if there are any questions from the board.
That's the only question I have, not to minimize your percentage gain numbers at the beginning of the presentation, but just curious, some of those starting numbers were awfully low. Was there, spring virtual learning impact there? Are you thinking that those numbers were lower than typical years because of what happened last spring?
Yes, it could be. We have our school action plan. The document that we work off of, it actually goes back a few years. And so we get a chance to follow the cohort of the kindergartners, then when they were in first grade, then second grade, then third grade. And so we do that longitudinally as well. And so, yes, I mean, there's many factors that went into last spring and then coming into the fall, but we've definitely had that discussion, especially when we sit down with grade level teams, determining which students are not on grade level and whether or not they should go into intervention. We really have that discussion about, well, do they need more of that direct instruction in person, or do we really feel that is a need that should be met through intervention or through an evaluation process, but we really take a look at that 9 weeks as perhaps some missing instruction, and we try some other strategies first before we maybe go the route of intervention. So yes.
Just to follow up to that, the on grade level that you're measuring in the fall is beginning of the year grade level, and then when you measure again in winter and spring, is it then like mid-year grade level versus end of year grade level?
Correct. Each one of those criteria has their own national norm or whatever's expected at that time of year. So yes.
Well, thank you very much, Matt and Jenny. We appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Now we have the secondary student representative updates.
So spring sports have had a great start to this year. Many student athletes are very happy to be back after missing last year's seasons. Track and field took first on the boys' side and second on the girls' side in their first meet of the season. The baseball team took a win against Eisenhower last week, and the Trap Club is currently undefeated. As for activities, the Diversity and Inclusion Group met last month and discussed the previous staff professional learning where students from the group were part of the experience, the No Place for Hate tour, and they were also able to learn more about and ask questions about the curriculum process. Social studies teacher Ms. Jecka is an honored recipient of the James Madison Fellowship, which will provide the opportunity for her to pursue her master's in political science and continue her work in constitutional studies. So congratulations to her on this outstanding accomplishment. Stress last week happened at the end of April. Students were able to relax a little bit during their studying breaks with a Jimmy John's lunch, therapy dogs, art projects, and an outdoor walk. Students were also able to purchase green Pura Vida bracelets to support the Vikings in Need Fund, which will pay for students who are unable to access therapy. West and Ike are co-running a Best Buddies Step-a-thon for inclusion this weekend. Money raised will go towards the Spread the Word to End the Word campaign. West is hosting an outdoor movie and tailgate on May 21st with Ferris Bueller's Day Off and food trucks including barbecue, grilled cheese, and ice cream. NHS will be hosting a hygiene drive for the Coop, which provides resources for West students. AP tests started last week, and students have had the option to choose between a paper and pencil option or an online date. Prom will be this weekend at the West Fieldhouse. This senior event will have a dinner, a dance, and more, making it a night to remember. Graduation plans are being finalized, and it is about a month away. And last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and many students and administrators work to appreciate all the hard work our staff does. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to move on into my update, which Emily just touched on. We had Staff Appreciation Week last week. It was actually kicked off on Sunday when we were able to, and again, want to thank those board members and community members that helped with the Give Education Day to allow us to kind of expand what we were able to provide our staff. But we had a day at the corners, and we were in that courtyard, that main courtyard at the corners. Bel Air Cantina was a sponsor of us, provided appetizers and free drinks to our staff. And while we were there, so we were there for a couple hours, we were able to host some raffle prizes. Some staff members were able to win some pretty nice raffle items. Actually, the corners did also kick in, a 50% match to what we were able to provide. So our staff members received a $25 gift card to the Corners, along with chances to win gift cards and raffle items for local businesses throughout the week. And then we also provided novelty items, ice cream items to our staff throughout the week as well. So I know that Janet had emailed the staff on behalf of the school board. I had in my presentations throughout, even while at the Corners, mentioned that it was on behalf of the school board and the administration. And we have provided some feedback to you as far as in the FYI of your board packet. This year has been an incredible year, and we certainly appreciate our staff every year. But to accomplish what we've accomplished this year is absolutely incredible in my eyes. Our staff have been on the front lines from day one, even though we all had questions, of what was to come or how things would go. They put their best foot forward on behalf of our students and their families, and were able to deliver and make it happen. And so again, just couldn't be more proud of the efforts of our staff, not just last week, but through the work that they've done throughout the year. And as we wrap up the end of the school year, we're very much looking forward to, as Emily mentioned, our seniors will have their respective proms coming up here, or senior, whatever you're calling them, Ellie, senior events, galas, similar to a prom, and senior awards. And then we are very much looking forward to having graduation in person coming up here the second week of June. I also, again, did mention the State Teacher of the Year that was mentioned previously. And then finally, we continue to receive accolades from U.S. News and World Report. I'm proud to mention that New Berlin Eisenhower was listed as number 3 top high school in the state of Wisconsin. Eisenhower is typically has been ranked number 1, was 5 last year, and typically in the top 10. So certainly proud of that. And I can't tell you how disappointed I am in the error that was made by U.S. News and World Report and that of AP. And as there was an error made, the College Board did not provide the AP results for New Berlin West to U.S. News and World Report, and therefore U.S. News and World Report neglected to give the proper rating to New Berlin West that they deserve and certainly should deserve. We are working diligently with both the College Board and U.S. News and World Report to make sure that we are able to get that recognition clarified so that we know exactly where New Berlin West falls. And so again, it's that error certainly is not a testament to what New Berlin West has done. What I will also say is the foundation of the efforts and those recognitions at our 2 high schools are built on the work that's happening at our elementary schools. You heard here today what Poplar Creek is able to do. They build that foundation and prepare those students at that level so that when they get to high school, they have that foundational effort, and we see those results there. So again, it's unfortunate that I'm not able to report exactly where New Berlin West would fall, but we're confident that they certainly would be at or near, if not better than they have been last year. So that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. On to the consent agenda. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? And do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Kurth. Any discussion? Any discussion? I'll just have a couple. For the CISA contract, it's pretty much the same as last year, right?
Yeah, these are just annual updates, and they are literally just works in progress, so it's the annual contract that we sign with them.
And it's really nice to see a school trip finally happening. So how is it? Is it expected to go through, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, it's for next March, so we've got quite a bit of time, 10 months between now and then. We certainly think a lot of things will change. We have advised our students to purchase the insurance. So should something go sideways, they're properly insured on that trip.
I'm very happy to see that as well. I'm glad you guys are moving forward and we're getting back to a little bit more normalcy and kids are getting the same experiences that they got 1, 2, 3 years ago. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I had a comment on that too, Joe, because I attended that. There was a virtual meeting about the trip because my daughter is in orchestra at Eisenhower and she wants to go. And so I was at that meeting, and one of the comments that the travel company made was that our district is requiring students to purchase that travel insurance, which I think is very smart, because I know that some parents may be tempted to say, oh, well, maybe I won't, buy that. And I think that that's a really important thing for us to do as a district, to promulgate that sort of conservative decision, because life is uncertain after having lived through COVID and all of that, and that goes with it. I think that was really smart. So thank you for doing that.
Is there anything else? Okay, since we have our motion, then we can go on to the vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. On to our regular agenda. Up first, action items discussed in work session, if necessary. We determined during our work session that we would have one motion in regards to privilege of the floor. And Chrislyn, you said you would tee up that motion.
I would move that as a policy, our board would allow a moment for public comment at the beginning of our meetings as well as at the end of our meetings, to allow the public more of an opportunity to comment on those items discussed after the initial privilege of the floor period.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so a motion by Ms. Wondrachek and a second by Ms. Unger. Any discussion?
Point of order, if we're changing a policy, making a motion to change a policy, don't we have to actually lay out the language of what the new policy would be? Because who would write the new policy then?
In response to that point of order, I don't think we're changing the policy itself. I think we're changing how it's interpreted. That's what I would posit.
Or we could bring it to the next, we could determine we want to amend it and then bring it to the next meeting, the exact language. So right now we're determining, do we even want to amend it? So I think that's what the motion's doing right now.
Fair enough.
I think that makes sense.
All right. Any other discussion, or should we go straight to vote? Okay, if there's no other discussion, then we will vote. All those in favor of changing the policy to add privilege of the floor at the beginning and the end, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Motion does not pass. Then we have discussed possible action on COVID-19 mitigation efforts, including quarantine protocols and face coverings. And I know there's been some updates in recommendations, so.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to do is apologize to the board, as this has been a moving target, so I really wasn't sure exactly what I was going to be bringing to the board today. And so let me just clarify that typically I would have included a presentation to you in Wednesday's packet, but things have changed since then and all the way through until this afternoon. So what I want to begin with is to say, restate that our goal as we plan to start next school year is to peel back on the mitigation efforts that have been prescribed. We continue to work closely with the county health department to make those determinations and adjustments. And so with that, we will continue to focus on that goal. Similar to what we did this year, when our goal was to try and get back to in-person school at the start of this fall, we had to work backward from that. And so that's what we're trying to do. So what you have here essentially is the case and quarantine trends related to COVID-19 in the school district. As you all are aware, we had a peak back in November and have seen a downward trend. We did see a bit of an uptick right around spring break time, but nothing of significance and nowhere near that of what we saw back in November. And then next, this is again data that shows what's happened with our staff case and quarantine trends. Same thing here. Our peaks were in November. And then again, unfortunately, when you look at some of these peaks down, towards now, those are actually like a couple, 3, 4 cases. So, they look like they're peaks, but they're not significant. So if you were looking at it a little wider, you wouldn't see such a big spike towards the end. But certainly, we've got downward trends. So this is what we're here to talk about today, is to get the board approval related to quarantine guidelines. So as you may or may not be aware, the county has diverted from the CDC and the state based on the work that Waukesha County school districts have done and work with them. So for example, in the school district of New Berlin, we have not experienced a single case of students having tested positive when they were a close contact and they were masked. So for example, and then we've only actually had one circumstance where kids were eating lunch that they were a close contact and they ended up having to quarantine. But we also don't know whether those kids actually were meeting outside of school because they're very good friends. And so you can't necessarily pinpoint that that was the exact time of transmission, because it certainly could have happened outside of school as well. But based on the data that Waukesha County Schools have provided to the county, they have come out with these new guidelines related to quarantine. I'm not going to read this to you, but it is something that, again, we think is critical, and we certainly would encourage the board to move in this direction. The other update that came about actually a bit earlier in the week last week was masking outdoors. And the CDC has updated the guidance related to masking outdoors specific to those that are vaccinated. What I will tell you is there is actually a lot of talk even now by the CDC and the county of whether or not we should be masking outdoors at all, whether you're vaccinated or not. And so I guess that's what I'm here today, is to ask the board, what is the board's preference? Even actually, what do we want to do even starting? Is it starting now? Do we want to leave it as is? Or do we want to wait until, like for example, the previous recommendation, I think we should start effective immediately. And with the masking outdoors, we should start effective immediately as well. As of right now, I'm not sure that you're aware, but currently at our middle and high schools, our students don't have to wear masks if they can properly social distance while outdoors. Right now at the elementary, though, we are requiring masks outside. And so I'm actually asking the board, is that something you want to reconsider now for the remainder of the school year? And as an administrative team, we are seeking direction as such. Now, mind you, that goes beyond what we're referencing here. But we certainly would like to get the board to make a decision tonight to help us determine what we want to do at the elementary, if anything different than what we're currently doing. Again, it would align with what we're already doing with our secondary students if we can maintain that appropriate social distancing. So, again, we are recommending that you approve the quarantine guidance from the county, and that we get some sort of clarification from the board whether you want to stay with just the CDC recommendation or you want to move beyond that. As of 1 p.m. today, and again, no decision necessarily we're asking for tonight, but we did ask families that were that are going to be involved in summer school what their pleasure was related to, and we've been using the words making masks optional. What I would encourage us to continue to do moving forward is not use the words optional, but use the word recommend. It means essentially the same thing, but if we are recommending, it's the same thing that the county is doing to us. They are recommending that we have masks in school. And so therefore, what I would suggest moving forward is if the board is looking to change something related to face coverings, that it would be recommend rather than optional per se. It's a vernacular thing. But anyway, for the data that we did receive, and that's as of this afternoon, now it did close shortly or a little bit ago, so we may have a few additional respondents. But we did have 129 elementary respondents and 85 secondary respondents, but everyone that participated was asked. And I apologize that you are not able to see this, but you should have it on your screens in front of you. But essentially, to wrap up, and again, I will read this for the sake of the public if they can't read this themselves at the moment. But the question related to, we believe that the same SDNB mitigation strategies, including but not limited to masks, face coverings, social distancing, etc., that are in place for the 2020-2021 school year should remain in place for summer school. We have approximately 45.9% that strongly agree at the secondary and 18.9% that agree at the secondary. At the elementary, you had 41.1% that strongly agreed and 29.5% that agreed. Now, let's get to the next question, which digs a little deeper. The question was, we will feel comfortable sending my child or children to summer school if the school district of New Berlin begins to make face coverings optional while in the classroom. At the secondary level, you have approximately 60% that either strongly agreed or agreed. And at the elementary level, you have approximately 61% of respondents that either strongly agreed or agreed related to, and again, we're going to be using the words making face coverings recommended. I think, based off of what we have here, you certainly do have a majority of respondents that would feel comfortable having the school district certainly ease back on restrictions specific to face coverings and masking, at least for summer school. Again, what we are asking for you tonight is to clarify exactly what the board wants to do. Again, we're recommending the quarantining guidelines as well as the board action regarding the CDC outdoor masking guidelines and what the board wants to do with that. At the next meeting on May 24, we would really like the board to take action on mitigation efforts and guidelines for the summer so that we can inform families as soon as possible. And then we will actually have data, because today I sent out a survey to all families. So again, we sent out a survey just to the summer school families, and then the survey that was sent out today is to all families on re-entry for next fall and getting family feedback on that. We would ask, though, that the board hold off on making any sort of permanent changes to our mitigation efforts for next fall until at least July. Many things are changing literally by the minute. As I understand it, the vaccine for those that want it for kids age 12 to 16 now, or 15 years and 364 days old, has now been approved as of today for an emergency release. Dr. Fauci, whether you agree or disagree with him, he is suggesting that masking indoors certainly is going to change significantly over the next month or so as well. And so, again, we're asking the board to please hold off, if you can, until at least the July meeting on making determinations for next fall, knowing that our goal is to scale back on our mitigation efforts. But again, that we do start these mitigation efforts come this summer with these adjustments. We are not encouraging the board to make any substantive changes for indoor face coverings from now till the end of the school year. Again, if the board is looking to make some changes for, say, outdoor usage, that's something that we can live with, but please, we would recommend nothing change as far as indoor face coverings for the rest of the school year for all the different reasons that we shared with the board previously. So with that, we would like at least maybe a couple separate motions, one related to the quarantine guidelines. There is a caveat with the quarantine guidelines that I would like to share. One of the unintended consequences with with moving in this direction is that, and I'm glad that we did not move any quicker than we needed to, is the WIAA is who our association is for athletics. And they have the expectation that we follow the state and CDC guidance related to whatever it is that they have, and that includes quarantines. So what we did find out is that as of at least today, we're still in talks with the WIAA, is that if our students don't follow the state and or CDC quarantine guidance, they may not be eligible for post-season play. And so our student athletes, which they have to abide by a different code of conduct, and in this case, if they want to participate in post-season play, will have to abide by the state and national recommendations, which is quarantining as they've said. So again, I just wanted to point that out there. Now, mind you, I don't believe that we should be making decisions on behalf of the entire district for just that small group of student athletes. They will just need to abide by what they need to if they want to participate as needed. So with that, I would like a motion related to the quarantining piece, and then maybe a separate motion related to outdoor face coverings for the rest of the school year.
I move to remove our outdoor quarantine policy of requiring students and staff to quarantine for 14 days after a close contact.
So I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Kurth. Any discussion?
And again, to clarify, this would be effective right now. So once it's approved, it would be moving forward, including the current school year.
I have a question about that motion. Mitch, you said revised outdoor guidelines for quarantine. I think you used the word outdoor in your
Our
motion.
current quarantine policy of requiring students and staff to quarantine for 14 days after a close contact.
Okay, because I heard the word outdoor in that motion, and I thought it was
Oh.
mixing the two, and I think that was confusing to me. So which one did you want to make a motion on?
I move to remove our current quarantine policy. Sorry, Diana.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Aren't we just going to adopt the recommendation, which would be update the school district's quarantine practices to align with Waukesha County? Would that make more sense to do a motion that way?
Then it would be both of them, which is,
No, it's just quarantining practices.
Oh,
That would
yeah.
not be masking. Masking would be the second one.
okay.
So you want to rescind your motion and make a new motion?
Madam President, may I rescind my motion?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a new motion.
I motion to adopt our guidelines to follow the county quarantine new guidelines.
Okay, so we still have a motion by Mr. Helmer, second by Mr. Kurth. Discussion.
So I'm just reviewing the county guidelines. I don't know if you can go back to that slide 4, but it says that to do that, their recommendation is that we would have to be committed to COVID-19 prevention policies, which include mask wearing, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I guess these two kind of go in hand. So if we're just going to change the outdoor masking policy to align with the new CDC recommendations, I don't have a concern with it. If we're going to go past that and even past the county's recommendations for outdoor masking, I feel like then this is called into question, because if we aren't going to be following the county guidelines on masking, I don't think we can follow the county guidelines on quarantine.
I was wondering if that's on a student-by-student basis, though. Is the county going to look at that as a district as a whole, or just a student? So let's say a student comes.
I think we run into a HIPAA violation. We can't ask students whether they're vaccinated or not.
No, that's not HIPAA.
Well, I think that's just a lot to keep
No,
track
that's
of. Like, how will we know? Are we policing who's wearing the mask and who isn't wearing the mask? Like, that seems like a lot more burden on us. So I think I am in favor of changing the quarantine guideline to the county recommendation as long as we meet the requirements of this first bullet.
And that what I'm wondering, because I thought the same thing. That's a good question, because I was thinking the same thing. And I was just wondering if in the process of doing contact tracing, is it discovered that that student wasn't wearing a mask, and therefore that student will have to follow the quarantine guidelines, versus if the student during contact tracing was discovered to have been wearing one, then that student wouldn't have to quarantine. Is that how that works, or is it the whole district? It doesn't matter. They'll be like, you're not following.
That's how we are interpreting it.
Okay.
I'd like to amend my motion.
You may.
I move to change our quarantine policy to follow Waukesha County guidance policy on quarantining, as well as changing our mask requirement policy to make masks optional for students and staff while outdoors.
Recommended. Recommended outdoors.
Recommended outdoors.
Okay, so we have an amendment. Discussion.
So are you weaving both in together? Is that the intention?
That's Kate's request, and I'm okay with that. I think that's.
Well, it's not really my request to put them together. I'm just trying to I feel like they're related.
Well, you don't
So,
want to vote on the second. You don't want to vote on the first one without knowing the second one's going to be a policy.
well, maybe we just vote on the masking first, and can we maybe just talk a little bit about what we mean by, so Joe said the secondary requirement right now for masks outside is as long as students are distancing, they don't have to wear them, which makes sense to me. But at the elementary level, what would that look like? If they don't want to wear a mask, they can't play basketball with a student who is wearing a mask?
And again, you have to remember that it's, so the Waukesha School District actually has not masked their students while outdoors all year. We've also heard from other schools around the area, southeast Wisconsin, that have done the same thing. They are not seeing outbreaks as a result of that. And so, I guess, and you have to remember the specific requirement of being a close contact is that you're within somebody, within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes or more. I'm just not seeing how that would happen, quite honestly. And so that, and yes, we are doing the contact tracing. We're going to continue to do the contact tracing regardless of what we're doing with quarantines. And yes, we believe that it's going to be up to the county. County, here's our evidence. What are you going to do with that kid? So, again, I just, based on the feedback that we've received, we're just not seeing that's, and again, the level of transmissibility while outdoors, based off of what we're hearing, it's just not happening.
So as of right now, the motion is to adopt the county guidelines, quarantine guidelines, we've added to it, we're only going to recommend wearing of masks outside in all circumstances.
All students.
Is there any other discussion, or we'll move on to the vote?
And again, please note that we will continue to encourage social distancing. We will encourage hand washing. We will encourage, if kids are going to be just sitting there, and if you're not, social distance, and if not, we recommend you put a mask on, kid. Again, and so like even for our staff, as we're planning things out for next fall or even into the summer, these are some of the things that we're thinking about is if I have a teacher that, for example, needs to work with Mitch in close proximity for more than 15 minutes, put on a mask or keep your distance or find a different way to do it. And again, masks, we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater either. So when we're talking about different scenarios about trying to, peel back on mitigation efforts, there may be times, because when we bring a plan to the board next meeting, there are times that we're going to recommend, not just recommend, but actually require that students have masks on, like buses. Like there's just no way that we can do away with that, at least in our opinion. Now the board can choose to do what they want, but if you're sitting with a family member, if you're vaccinated, if there are so many different variables, but again, we're not there yet. So again, I just want to just encourage us that I think for now, I think this would be appropriate.
I just had a question, a clarification, regarding the masking outdoor guidelines. So the CDC updated its guidance relating to masking outdoors. You reported that, Joe, and I read that as well. The change that the CDC made was regarding fully vaccinated people, saying that somebody who's in their full vaccination period after the shots have been administered, or the single shot if it's J&J, is no longer required to wear masks outdoors unless in a crowded space. So basically what you're recommending is that we take that recommendation and basically extend it to not just
I wouldn't say that's
vaccinated.
not what I recommended. That's the motion that's been brought
Okay,
forth. and
that's what I'm trying to sort
and I-
out,
and I
because
responded to the question of, how do we operationalize that? And that's what I had shared, that it's, not problematic for us to operationalize it.
Okay, so, but I think that we're conflating things here, because I think that the CDC did not recommend what's being proposed. It just as a point of clarification. So
My motion was my motion. It didn't have any inferences of.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that that was understood among the body and the public.
So, and you said, Joe, Waukesha City schools as well as other county, city/town schools have not been masking outdoors for elementary
some
recess.
cases.
And then what is the county recommendation for outdoor masking only to change it to the CDC level, or?
As of now.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, then we'll move on to the vote. All those in favor of adopting?
Can you repeat the motion?
That's what I
for-
was just gonna do.
Thank you.
Yes. So if I get the motion wrong, please correct me. All those in favor of adopting the Waukesha County guidelines regarding quarantine and making masks recommended outdoors in all situations?
Yeah.
Those who approve, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes. Let's see, so we're on our discussion here about quarantine and protocols. I did want to bring this up, though, for the board to sort of give you some direction on what we're thinking as well. So this is a time to let those know where we're sort of going with this. And I don't know if anybody has any other motions. We don't need to make a motion to make final decisions tonight, because obviously you're bringing us a plan. So I'm looking if there's any motions to say, this is what we would like you to make a goal of in your plan.
Madam President, I'd love to make one. I also move to direct the administration to create a plan to remove the indoor mask mandate for summer school and a path forward of removing more mitigation procedures as we transition back to normal.
Say it slower, please.
I always forget you're writing it down as I read it. I move to direct the administration to create a plan to remove the indoor mask mandate for summer school and a path forward to removing more mitigation procedures as we transition. I'm still fast, sorry. Where do you want me to go back to? Back to normal. Transition back to normal.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Helmer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll give it to Mr. Seidel. I have a second by Mr. Seidel. Discussion.
I'd like to clarify, this is not a vote to do it. This is the direction that I feel that we need to start looking at, and I think that this is what I'm getting a lot of feedback from the public, so I would like to see this plan, and I think a lot of people would too.
Just voting on what we would like the plan to see.
Yes, and we will be prepared to bring that to the board at the next meeting. a plan of what that could look like and operationalize it. We would also include in that plan further considerations for fall, but we wouldn't be asking the board to vote on things for fall until July. So we've already got really great working documents in place as we develop our planning, and we'll be more than ready to have that plan presented as has been requested for board action at the next meeting. And I know there was discussion about having a special meeting, but I think the board is feeling a need to respond sooner. So therefore, that's why, I believe, Janet, you encouraged us to have this topic added for tonight, and then actually having approval or direction from the board actually at the May 24 meeting. So no need to have an additional meeting beyond that, at least for summer school.
Yeah, so I would like to strongly request that in advance of that 5/24 meeting, we have the recommendation to review, because I do not want to be in a situation again like this where we're asked to vote on something we've just seen 5 minutes prior.
You will have it that Wednesday.
Thanks.
Unless you'll have a draft on Wednesday, and if something changes along the way,
I think that's
certainly
fine. I mean, I feel like a draft is better than nothing, because I
Yes.
think I can tell from what Mitch and Jen have said that they had a better sense of what you would be bringing tonight, while I did not feel like I had much of a clue other than the email that was sent out to all families on Friday. So a draft at least would give me an idea of what
Yes.
you would be bringing, and I could prepare a little bit.
we will have that.
We didn't know that much more.
I had the same information.
I
didn't have any
actually
slides.
put this on the agenda myself because I felt the board needed to give some direction. The parents want to know, what does the board want? And then in the process of me putting that on the agenda, it turned out that Waukesha County was working on this, and it literally came out practically at the same time. So probably only knew a day earlier that maybe Waukesha was changing. That's it.
General response to your motion, Mitch, or do you have a second? Yes, we have.
We had a
okay,
second.
so we're allowed to talk. I'm not opposed to some mitigations going away. I mean, I feel like I filled out my survey tonight, but the plexiglass, the one-way hallways, masking though is the thing indoors that I'm not ready to give up for unvaccinated people. So I'm going to vote no.
And I think to that point, it's probably no surprise to any of you that I feel the same way. I think that one thing that has been very clear to me throughout this entire episode is that none of us sitting on this panel are healthcare experts. None of us. And that is a point that I think is sometimes lost on people. That I believe, as an attorney who's been practicing for 25 years, I can give good legal advice to people because that's my job. And that's what I've been trained to do. That's what my education is in. That's what my experience is in. I am not a medical expert. But what I can tell you is that I am a very conservative person. I believe in conservative principles. When you're making decisions on behalf of the public, I think you have to be risk averse. I think you have to be careful. And I think you have to remember that we, as the members of this body, are the fiduciary agents for this district. And should we make decisions that cause bad things to happen in our buildings and unnecessary transmissions of this virus to occur, which later on lead to death of somebody associated with our district, we are the ones who will have to bear that and will eventually be sued and likely victoriously trounced upon. That is something as a fiduciary agent for this district that I am not prepared to embrace. And I think that it's in our interest as people who tout conservative principles, and conservative, small c conservative, means that we make decisions, that we have an understanding of what those mean. And again, none of us are healthcare experts, not one of us. and that we consider the fact that we're making these decisions on behalf of so many other people. And we need to be careful about what we do. And mask wearing is not an infringement on someone's freedom. It's just not. And mask wearing, unlike, for example, racial intolerance or an inability to vote.
Keep it on topic, please.
Which would be an infringement on freedoms. Mask wearing on topic is not. And thus I think that we really need to take a step back and remember to stay in our lane, because our lane is not to be medical healthcare experts. None of us are those experts. And I think that Children's Hospital, for example, released a statement on April 20th. I posted it to my Facebook page, and I will forward it to all of you if you'd like to read it, which was really good advice about what schools should be doing. And I think we should consider that, because those people are actual bona fide experts. That's who we need to listen to. I, like everybody else up here, would love it if COVID would just go away in a hole and not be a problem for us anymore. I would love that. That's just denying reality. And I don't believe in denying reality. I think reality is reality. So I also will vote no.
Are you sure?
Sorry?
Do you have anything? No? Anybody else?
I feel like we're starting to wander off topic.
Okay.
And I
Well,
kind of
okay.
want to get us back to point at hand.
I will be voting in favor of the motion. I see conservative differently. Conservative is not about making decisions on behalf of other people. I don't need to be making that decision for somebody else. I think the parents should be making that decision at this point. They have their own healthcare advisors that can tell them whether or not they think their children should be wearing masks in school. They can talk to their own pediatricians and ask, should my child wear a mask? And do what their own family physician is telling them. Making mask recommended does not mean you can't wear a mask. Everybody's free to choose whether or not they need to wear a mask if we do go recommended. It is consistent with what Waukesha is saying. Waukesha is saying recommended, and yet we're making it required. I think we should go recommended. Let's be consistent. I'm okay with keeping things the way they are right now because we have families that made decisions, whether they're doing virtual or in person, based on the current plan that we have in place, and we don't need to mess that up for the last couple of weeks of school here. But going forward, I think we should change it. Right now, it's in a way that if parents don't want their children to wear masks in school, they absolutely object. They can do virtual. I think it's time to switch it. If you do not feel comfortable with your child being in school without everybody wearing a mask, then you have the option to go virtual. And so that's why I will be voting in favor of this motion. Thank you. If there's no other discussion, we're ready to vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes. Then we do have another discuss approve item for the district's insurance bids on workers' comp, liability, and property. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Helmer. Any discussion?
So, as you may be aware, we are recommending the attached insurance renewal by M3 and R&R Insurance. The district dropped their foreign travel insurance until such time the district approves travel abroad. So while we are comfortable with domestic travel for our students, we're not comfortable with international travel, at least for next school year. We think that there are many more factors that would control our eligibility of whether to participate or not as far as international travel goes. So we won't be needing that coverage. The equipment breakdown coverage was moved from EMC to Liberty with increased overall coverage at a reduced rate. and cyber liability coverage was moved from Access to HDI with increased overall coverage at a reduced rate. While the total coverage is essentially the same cost as the current school year, the increases in property casualty liability rates were offset by savings in workers' comp rates due to a positive workers' compensation mod factor. The reduction of the anticipated dividend in workers' comp is not unusual, as dividends typically are reduced at the same time rates are reduced. Therefore, we would recommend approval of the district's insurance bids related to workman's comp liability and property insurance as presented.
Okay, so we have our motion. Did I mess this up?
Do we have a motion?
I'm sorry, say that again.
You have to say the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I already called for
Here.
motion. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Yeah, I think we did.
Oh, we did. Sorry,
Yeah,
you're
we
right. Gotta
did.
vote. You're right.
We
My
did, and
fault.
I'm sorry, I started the discussion. I just started the discussion too soon. We probably should have had Joe present it first before and so I missed that. So any of our own discussion now that we heard what Joe had to say. All right, then all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. And then we have one action item on from closed session.
I'll make a motion to approve the employment services report as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel, a second by Mr. Helmer. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. Then we have a reminder of future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7:00 p.m. in the Eisenhower Commons, unless noted otherwise. May 17th, we have finalized that we are going to have a personnel committee meeting at 4:00 p.m. It's in the district office on the agenda, but I think we might be doing that virtual. It would be, if it's virtual, it is broadcast then, correct? Yes. And then May 24th, we have a regular board meeting, and June 14th, a regular board meeting. Other important events and dates to remember is May 31st, Memorial Day. There will be no school. June 11th is the West High School graduation in the Field House at 6:30 p.m. June 12th is the Eisenhower High School graduation, also in the New Berlin West Field House at 1:30 p.m. And then do I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam President, I motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer, a second by Mr. Kurth to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed?